What's up, guys? So it's been a few days since I've updated you guys and put out a new video, so I just wanted to come outside. It's been raining for about two or 3 days, and so I haven't been out in the garden. I wanted to take a look around. I wanted to bring you guys with me and show you what I did get done one of the days that I did not decide to film. If you remember me talking about in maybe 2 videos past about how much stuff that I needed to get done, so the next day after that I came out here and I just started laying down cardboard. My husband took 2 trips to the local Dollar General for me and picked up 2 truckloads of cardboard, and I was able to lay down a bunch of cardboard. I still don't have the whole garden cardboarded, but practically almost there. So I'll turn you guys around and show you what I did get done. So as I come into the entrance of the garden, to the left right here, I did get that whole fence going, connecting to that bed and down that pathway, all cardboarded. We didn't move these pools yet, but we did move the containers, and so all underneath the containers are cardboarded. So the space that is not cardboarded is like right here in the center. And we did continue the pathway out through here. And so this whole right side going down is cardboarded. And then I did have my son go ahead and start laying down some leftover topsoil and compost we had along the fence right here, where all of the remnants of our cardboard is right there. I did think that it would be cool to have an in-ground bed along this fence right here, but when it rained, I realized that there's a low spot here that I forgot about. We added some topsoil before we even built this garden when we first moved in here, because we saw that it puddled, but I guess not enough, because it's still puddled and washed away some of the soil that my son had even laid down there. And so it's kind of right in this spot right here on the outside where you see it's mostly dirt. It's because that's a low spot, and all of the soil kind of just like eroded away, and it was a big puddle there for 2 days. So instead of having an in-ground bed, now I'm thinking that maybe I would have a raised bed along that fence, or maybe a couple raised beds, I don't know. Then to hold the cardboard in place, we just started moving all of my fruit trees and bushes around to hold the cardboard in case it got windy before we put down wood chips. My son did start on putting down some layers of wood chips, but obviously we're not complete. We still have lots of wood chips to put down. For the rest of the space, since that's the remnants of cardboard we have, I'm going to be using this contractor's paper that you just get from your local Lowe's or Home Depot. And I'll probably lay it down maybe 2 or 3 layers deep, because I think this area for the most part is going to be a walkway. I might in the future add a greenhouse or something like that. I'm just not sure. So I definitely want to keep down weeds for as long as possible. We did on one of those days, get our stove delivered. We were having stove problems, and we got our stove delivered. So we got 3 big boxes. We didn't get 3 stoves, but they had extra boxes on their truck, and so they gave us the extra boxes. That took out a good portion of this garden. So this container right here broke on the side, and so I will be taking this apart, reusing the soil. But I do want to plant in my other containers and in my other pools. In this one I have ginger, but the whole thing isn't ginger, and so I might add something here. I might just leave it, but I do want to plant something else in these containers once I get everything situated. We have some new lilies that have opened up. This one is absolutely gorgeous with the little dots on it. And then in this bed up here, we also have some beautiful, beautiful lilies. Y'all, this borage just keeps getting bigger and bigger. I've literally never grew a borage. I know I said that before, this big. It's actually up to my hip right now. It's at hip level with me. Oh my goodness, I see a cucumber beetle. Look at it, a Japanese beetle. The pests are out. So I thought it would be fun for me to just sit right here and just answer a few questions or like tell you a little bit about me. I've had a lot of new subscribers asking questions and maybe they're not up to date, and so I just thought that I would put some general information in this video and I'll label it like that so that people can find it. So if you do not know, my name is Dominique, but just call me Dom. People usually end up calling me Dom, whether or not I tell them my name is Dom. If I just say Dominique, people usually just call me Dom. So for as long as I can remember. So you can call me Dom as well. I am 33 years old. I'll be 34 in August. I have been married for 11 years. So the first day that you guys saw me with this new hair and everyone and makeup, that was actually my anniversary when I picked those onions. I forgot to say it in that video, but I did post a picture on Instagram telling you guys that it was my anniversary. We've been married 11 years. My husband's name is Jonathan. Fun fact, I never call him Jonathan unless I'm talking to somebody about him. I'll say John, but I call him Baby and he calls me Babyface. So it's very if we're outside and I'm yelling Baby, it's hilarious. People are like looking around like, who's she talking to? My 4-year-old, when she was a baby, she actually started calling my husband Baby because I don't call him by his name, and she was just like, hey baby. So we have 4 kids. We have one son named Aiden. He will be 15 in August. We have 3 girls. Our first girl is Anaya. She will be 10 next month. And then we have a 7-year-old Nehemiah and a 4-year-old Nael. So all of our kids' name has 2 I's in it, and they all have J middle names. So that is, we did that on purpose. So Nehemiah, instead of having 1 I, has 2. Same thing with Aiden, Anaya, and Nael. I am originally from the Bronx, New York, specifically the projects. My husband is from New Orleans, or New Orleans, as he would call it. We actually met in North Carolina and lived there for a couple years before moving to the Charleston area of South Carolina. And we've been here until we sold our house in August of 2019. We did purchase an RV and live in our RV for 2 years and 2 months before closing on this property. At our old property, I did have a garden that I started, I think 7 years ago, because my 7-year-old was I think I started it when I was pregnant with her. And so 7 years ago, I had my first garden. It was probably about the size of my log raised bed area. I don't know how big that is, but that's probably how big my side yard was. And I used the same pine boards that I use for this garden for the wood-sided raised beds, except for those boards were 8 feet. So my garden beds were mostly 4 by 8. I did have a few that were 3 by 6, where in this garden all of my beds are 3 by 6 because I didn't find any 8-foot pine boards, or this is fencing boards. I did not know how to cook when I got married. It's always so funny. I remember a time when my son was about 3 or 4 years old, and he told someone that his mom burnt food she didn't know how to cook, and that she only made baked chicken and boxed macaroni and cheese, which was true because I didn't know. I thought that was cooking because I wasn't raised. No one taught me how to cook, and so I thought that knowing how to make the Velveeta shells and like chicken and corn was like a staple every day. I thought that that was like cooking, like, you know, really. And like a box cake, you know, I remember someone asking if I knew how to make a cake from scratch, and I'm like, yeah, I know how to make a cake from scratch, because that's what my grandma, I saw her just make box cake, and she would just replace the water for milk and add butter instead of oil, and everyone loved her cakes. And so I thought that was cooking from scratch, and I did not know that until actually moving to the Charleston area. And meeting my friend Taquisha that I've mentioned on here. Our Freedom Song is her channel. I'll link it down below. I remember a time when I wanted to learn how to bake bread, and so one of my other friends, Rachel, she sent me a bunch of recipes on making bread, and I didn't know the difference between yeast and nutritional yeast. And so at this time I was shopping at Whole Foods, trying to get everything like organic and natural and everything, and just wanting to learn how to cook and eat better for my family. And I didn't know what yeast was, and so I was trying to make bread, looking at the recipe, got the flour and everything, and then went to Whole Food and was looking for yeast, found a sign that said nutritional yeast. I bought it, used it to make bread. Of course, nutritional yeast is not the same thing as yeast, like rising flour yeast that that you use to make bread. And so my bread did not rise, and I'm like messaging her like, I tried to make bread and it didn't rise, and it's hard, and I don't know what I did, and I think I tried it again. She was like, well, was it bubbly? And I was like, no, I don't remember being bubbly. She's like, well, maybe your yeast is like not active. And I'm like, okay, try it again. I don't even know how I figured out that I was not using actually active yeast, that I was using nutritional yeast. But when we found out, we had a good laugh at that, and I just remember being like, oh my goodness, like. And so that's a story that I laugh at all the time, that I didn't know the difference between yeast to make bread or yeast, nutritional yeast that people use as a cheese substitute. So I've actually come a long way from then. I still follow lots of recipes. I'm not one of those cooks that can go like throwing stuff in. I am not that person. I will oversalt something, overspice something. I need my measurements, and that's okay. I'm completely fine with that. I have made bread lots of times since then, and it's turned out good. And so that's just a little encouragement for you. If you do not know how to cook and you wasn't raised, cooking from scratch or anything like that, you can totally learn by following recipes. There's nothing wrong with that. I do consider myself a slow cook, but yeah, I can follow a recipe. So we're good now. We are a homeschooling family, so all of our kids stay home with us. Our son is in 9th grade, our 9-year-old's in 4th grade, and our 7-year-old, she is in 1st grade. Her birthday's late, so I think she's in 1st grade because she just turned 7 in November. And so we do homeschool. I never heard of homeschooling growing up. I didn't even know that was an option or thing until moving down here. And the only reason why is because my son had went to, I think, like a private Christian, like when he was 4 years old, like a school, like a pre-K school, and then I think it was, or maybe it was kindergarten, and then when we came out to Charleston, he was either in kindergarten or 1st grade, and his reading was so behind. He was not doing good. It was a struggle at home because they wanted you to do like 100 books in the 100 days of school, and it would take like 4 hours for him to get like halfway through The Cat in the Hat, because I mean he just had trouble at sounding out. He couldn't remember what the sounds words made. Like it was very frustrating to me, and I remember it being like the first month or so, maybe even shorter, like the first week of school, I don't know, and I was just like, there has to be something. And so I just remember doing like a Google and finding that I could sign him up for, I think it was like Time for Learning, and it was like a game, and he thought it was fun, and we spent like the whole weekend doing that, and he was actually learning stuff. And I think that's how I found out that I could homeschool, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can homeschool. So that's kind of how we got into homeschooling. Since then, it's been it's not easy at all, but I do think there's no like private schools around here or any Christian schools around here, and so the only option would be public school. And for that, I think it's better for us to just continue homeschooling. So that's how we got into homeschooling. So my favorite color actually used to be purple for a very long time, until I started realizing that it wasn't anymore. So I changed to kind of like a turquoise or a teal in between those. Both of those are like a tie for me. They're really pretty, and I actually want to spray paint my front gate of the garden turquoise or teal color. I'm finding that I'm actually really enjoying yellow as well. So yellow specifically mixed with the turquoise and teal color, I think they just go really good together. I actually want to paint the bottom cabinets in my house when we paint them and get new countertops yellow. So that should be really fun. Another question that someone's asked, and I just want to put that in this video, is how did I design my garden space? And so like I said, I had like these kinds of beds, the wooden size beds in my old garden, and so I knew that I was going to be using the same wood and like getting it on clearance because years ago when I built my garden they were on clearance, and I knew that, you know, they would have, or was hoping that they would still have more clearance wood, and they did. And so each of these boards, I think I've shared in a video, were like 59 cents or something like that. And so using 3 boards, these beds cost less than $2 to make. As far as design, I didn't write it out anywhere. I tried so many times, tried to like look up people's garden spaces for like inspiration. I am not like a person that can like see a whole thing in and just see how lovely it's going to look. I need like a piece here and a piece here, and then just keep adding on to it, and I'm like, okay, I see it, you know, kind of like that, or see a picture or something like that, which I really couldn't find something. Like I saw Charles Dowling his kind of beds, and I thought about like having no sides and them being, you know, kind of like 4x8 but with no sides. But I was worried about the soil washing away, and I didn't know that I wanted to do no dig. In my other garden, I did not start out as no dig. I did lay down some cardboard and add soil on top eventually, but I think the first year my garden was in ground. I had lots of clay soil, and so I just added in peat moss. I did not know that it was hydrophobic and that you had to water it in. So it literally, I just sprinkled it on top and was planted seeds in, and my soil was very clay, and so nothing sprouted, and it was just a hot mess. And I think I did end up tilling that in. And after a while, I did lay down cardboard, and some of them I didn't lay down cardboard and put the wood beds because I thought that the weeds wouldn't come through. They definitely did. Without having cardboard, they came through much faster. And I did have wood pathways because I lived in the city, and so I was able to get, I think, like 3 chip drops. Here I'm out of the city limits, and so I've only gotten 1 chip drop. But the good thing about being here is that this whole area was had lots and lots of trees, very wooded, and so we had a company come and force mulch, and so they basically grind down all the trees that are on our property right here, and so all of the wood chips basically stayed on our property. And so when we need to finish filling the pathways and stuff like that, we just basically go to the other side, scoop up wood chips, and then bring them over here. So it's been good, and we still have lots and lots of wood chips on the other side. So back to this garden. With this garden, I was working through like what I wanted, trying to figure out, look at pictures, like did I want long beds, do I want short beds, you know, I didn't really know. And then one day I was looking at the logs, and I'm like, I can use logs, or maybe I saw a picture and was like, maybe I should use these logs as borders. And so I just had my son bring up, I was like, oh, I don't have to buy wood, it's gonna be less expensive, it's free. We had a big pile of logs that the tree company had dropped from trees being too close to our house, so they couldn't mulch those, so we had to get another company to come out. And so we logged over lots and lots of logs and put down cardboard all over this place, put the logs down, put the compost, topsoil, peat moss, perlite mixture on top, and that's how that began, this log raised bed area. after I ran out of logs, the rest of the logs were too heavy to bring over, and I had this landscape fabric because I also had thought about just laying down landscape fabric throughout the whole garden, making like long farm rows and just planting like that. And so I decided to lay down this landscape fabric, and I was still thinking, okay, what do I want to do with the rest of this area, because I knew how long I wanted the area. I knew I wanted it to go back to where it's gone back to, and still trying to process it. And basically I just came up with like little by little. I knew I wanted a cross, and that I wanted something lovely in it, and for it to be kind of like in the center. And so that kind of just basically laid out the rest of the garden, because once I put this here, I had to basically work around it. And so then that's how I ended up with the 2 raised beds on either side of my cross, and then going back. And then since I had, let me turn you around, then I would have this much walkway, and I didn't want to, so I was like, oh, I should just put an in-ground bed, because I didn't want another bed going that way, because I thought it would be too wide. But I was like, if I could just do an in-ground bed about 2 feet going long ways, that would be a good way to utilize that space. And so that's how that came up with that area right there. And so this is a close-up, as you can see. So this is my cross, and so when I was just laying, I just kind of laid out these beds with nothing in them, different ways to see how I wanted them. And then I ultimately came up that I could fit 2 on this side and 2 on that side, going all the way back. So anytime I would run out of wood to make the beds, then I would just take another trip to Home Depot and hope that they had more clearance wood, and they would. The last time though, I did end up going to Lowe's to see if they had clearance wood, and they did, but it was not, it was only 50% off instead of 75 or 70% off that Home Depot gives you for the same dog picket posts, wooden fence that are cracked or bent or whatever. And so definitely I think Home Depot clearance wood is better than trying at Lowe's. But if Lowe's is all you have, then definitely try them. And then as far as like what to plant where, I just came out here and would sit. I still come out here and sit because there's lots of beds that aren't planted, and just think about what it would look like if I planted that specific thing that I'm thinking, or that I know I have left to plant. So I know I have winter squash to plant, I know I have some larger melons to plant, and then I just think about, okay, those are long vining things, and I think about if I plant them here, which direction they're gonna go, they're gonna take a pathway, etc. And so that's basically how I think about what's gonna go in the beds. I am very much a spontaneous person. Sometimes I come out here and I say I'm coming out here to do one thing, and sometimes I come out here and completely do something different. I like to go with the flow, and sometimes, most of the time, I say that works out for me. Obviously it's my garden, so I can do with it as I want to. But if you do not know already, gardening is actually my favorite thing to do. I love it so much. I love to watch seeds sprout. I remember being, just a new believer and reading in 1 Corinthians, I think it's 1 Corinthians 10:15, where it talked about the splendor, that how the Lord gave everybody the splendor of, like, the stars have different splendor than the moon and all these things, and about how when you plant a seed that it comes up as something totally different. And I remember just being into gardening, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, that's so, it just made sense to me. And it was just like an aha moment, that like how awesome the Lord is, and how it's so true. You plant a seed, like say a bean seed, and what comes up is not the bean, it comes up a green plant that turns into a bean plant and then produces lots and lots of other beans. And just thinking on that and how amazing that is, and how awesome our Creator is, and I just was like in awe. And so I absolutely love to plant seeds. It's my favorite thing to do, is to plant seeds, to watch them grow. I am definitely one of those plant parents that plants a seed and then like an hour later I'm like, are you coming up? You see all those like memes and stuff where people are like, spying on their plants, you know, and keep watering them. So I'm very I water them every day until I see them, and then when they come up, I'm so happy and I want to do it again. It makes me absolutely so happy. Every time I think of the garden, I think about the first garden, the Garden of Eden, and just how beautiful that must have looked. I mean, because I can make a garden that space that I think is beautiful, that other people think is beautiful. I can see other garden spaces that are beautiful, and so I just think about that's me in my own flesh and mind, and you know, I don't even have the full capabilities as like God, and so, and he makes the most beautiful things. And so I think about the Garden of Eden and about how lovely it must have been. And so me gardening just is an expression of me thinking about the first garden in the Garden of Eden and just how special that is. And so it is getting late, and I hope that you've enjoyed this video and just getting to know some random things about me. Hopefully I've answered some questions that people have asked, and if you guys have any more questions, of course I do my best to answer all of you guys's and respond to everybody. But if you have any more specific questions or any videos that I should do, you can just leave them down in the comments and I will get back to them.